Welcome to episode number 15 of the Kevin Rooke Show. Today's conversation is with Danny Scott and Zakk over at CoinCorner. CoinCorner is a Bitcoin business based in Europe, and they're doing a lot of cool work integrating Lightning into their products. So we talked about what some of those products are today. We talked about what they're working on. Specifically, one cool thing is they're working on a Lightning card, like a physical NFC-enabled card for Lightning payments. And we also talked about the future of Lightning and LNURL and Lightning addresses and how people are going to be interacting with the protocol in the future. Just a quick shout out before we get into the episode. This episode is sponsored by Voltage. Voltage is the premier provider of Bitcoin and Lightning node infrastructure. We'll have more to talk about them later in the show. But I also want to give a quick shout out to all the listeners who have sent in tips and sats and messages throughout the last few weeks. I've noticed it's really picked up in the last little while. This week was a record number of sats tipped, a record number of comments I've received. So thank you all for sending in sats and tips. As you all know, it's a Lightning podcast. You can go download Fountain or any other Lightning podcasting app and interact with the show. One thing I want to start is I want to start paying some of those sats back to listeners for comments. So at the end of the show in the Lightning round, we'll do a different segment, and I will also be starting to give away sats for comments. So because it's episode number 15, I figured I'd start off with 1,500 sats up for grabs for a comment, a randomly selected comment that you guys leave in this show. So I will announce the winner in episode 16. But yeah, that's the plan now, is to start giving some of these sats back. You guys are really sending a lot my way, and so I want to send some back and say thank you. But without further ado, we'll get into the show and we'll talk about that in the lightning round. Danny and Zakk, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. How are you guys doing today?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having us on.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having us on.
We're good, thank you. Stuck on the Isle of Man in miserable weather, but not so bad.
I'd love to hear more about CoinCorner. Talk to me about the business, how it started, your backgrounds, and how and what it does today, because it's more than just a Bitcoin exchange.
Yeah, sure. Let's pick this one up. So CoinCorner traditionally did start as, I guess, a Bitcoin exchange back in 2014. We were kind of trader focused, so we tried to be trader focused initially, and then I think we very quickly realized the customer base we were gaining from the UK demographic and Isle of Man. We were seeing that it was more retail focused, and people didn't really want all the graphs, the charts, the numbers, the trade inside. They wanted to just come on, buy Bitcoin, a simple place to just buy Bitcoin. So we pivoted very early to simplify the process and to make it a simple place to just come and buy Bitcoin, which we've tried to do since 2014 all the way through till today at the core of the business. However, we have tried to keep a focus on purely Bitcoin and come away from the altcoin side of things. And we also now, or over the years as well, we've started to introduce more products and more features focused again around Bitcoin and more so Lightning in the more recent times. So we have things like CoinCorner Checkout, which is a payment gateway for Bitcoin and Lightning payments. So we have that on a lot of e-commerce companies we now have on board accepting Bitcoin Lightning payments, mainly UK sort of focused entities. We have a point of sale app as well on iOS and Android. So like local merchants and merchants in the UK can accept Bitcoin and Lightning payments. We have CoinCorner Cashback, which is a similar to you guys in the US will see Lolly, so the cashback side of things. So you can come onto the website, find a shop in the UK that you normally shop at, click through, and you get cashback on whatever you spend. So we've got over about 1,000 merchants, I think it is, in the UK now on the UK cashback. And we have a mobile app for users, so iOS, Android app as well, just for the normal customer base, which also has Lightning capabilities, LNURL capabilities, and some other things that will be coming soon. So that is our core products offering at the minute, with a lot more to come this year.
Very cool. You mentioned that you at one point made this transition from focusing on, you had a bunch of altcoins to now a kind of focus on Bitcoin. Walk me through how that happened. What were the thought processes in your head where you realized that Bitcoin was the right thing to focus on? What kind of changed over time for you guys?
I think, excuse me. So originally we started off with weirdly Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dogecoin. So that was back in 2014. Dogecoin had just launched in 2013, I think the back end of 2013. We were mining Bitcoin and altcoins at the time. So we kind of launched with a couple of more popular ones, got the ball rolling. It's before I really got my head into Bitcoin as an asset and what Bitcoin actually is. So we kind of launched with what we thought the crowd wanted and what the community wanted. What we very quickly realized, not even a year in, we kind of got to a point where I think it was like 95% plus of our volume was Bitcoin and the remainder made up of the altcoins. So we decided to drop the altcoins at the time and keep a focus on Bitcoin very early on, so that was like 2015 time. However, as time passed, we still are very much an independent exchange. So we don't have venture capital funding or institutional money in any way. We've been self-funded from day one, and we took a small angel investment from a local high net worth on the island who we knew. So there's only ever been originally the sort of three co-founders and the angel investor that's been on board. So we very much had a control and say in where we took the company in the direction we wanted to go, which is what allowed us to stay more Bitcoin focused. As time went on, we got into 2016, 17, sort of 18 period, and we were talking to a lot of venture capital companies. This is my excuse as to why we ended up with altcoins, which we get a lot of stick. I get a lot of stick from the UK community, especially where we do have Litecoin and Ethereum on the platform at the minute. Back in 2018, I think that was. I wanted to stay Bitcoin focused, but we were talking to a number of venture capital companies, and one of them that we were talking to was asking us about altcoins and saying, why have we not got them on? Can we not add them? I went through the process and the conversation with them around, yes, we could easily add them if we wanted to. I think you just joined about 6 months before, 6 months, a year earlier to that. And we had the conversation. They said, right, okay, well, let's add them and let's see, how fast can you actually add them? If we want to invest, we want to see other ones on there. So we added them within 2 or 3 weeks, I think, was it?
Yeah, it didn't take long at all.
Myself doing the actual development for that at the time. We got them on and we went back to them and said, look, we've added them, so on, so on. They were impressed. Great. We ticked a box. We stupidly, I guess at the time, the decision to add them to impress a VC that we were trying to get funding from. We eventually didn't take the funding and we continued by ourselves. So we never required it. However, we got hit with the burden of Litecoin, Ethereum and XRP at the time as well and stuck with them. So we realized then, again, it was a burden. Still years passed, 2 years passed, and still 90%, 95% of the volume was generally Bitcoin trades and the remainder being the altcoins on the platform. So we have ended up stuck with the altcoins on the platform, or two of them, Litecoin and Ethereum at the minute, with the headache of taking them off becomes more of a burden than just leaving them on to sit there in the background. But I personally have always been very focused on Bitcoin only. We added them purely from an investment angle where we thought we needed that investment at the time. We were fortunate enough not to need it and didn't take it, which distracted us along the way. I think as every business does, you get distracted with one thing or another. But we were then able to turn a focus back into Bitcoin, and all of the future all the products that came after that point were all pretty much Bitcoin focused. The cashback, the checkout, everything is Bitcoin only in that respect. So the realization, going back to the original question, I guess, the realization for me was probably early on in the 2015 time periods. The unfortunate, I guess, and this is, I guess, where a lot of other, you'll see larger Bitcoin exchanges or larger exchanges will go through the same process. Their investors have control in some respect and sway, and they're able to, I guess, pressure them into bringing things in that generate short-term revenue, even though it may be a long-term loss in some respects. Which is why I know we'll get onto it at some point talking about Lightning and exchanges, I'm sure, but seeing other exchanges these days adding altcoin after altcoin rather than adding focus around the Bitcoin actual innovation, and Lightning being the key one for me at the minute as well.
Yeah. Like, so how did you guys then come to realize it was a good idea to integrate Lightning when you're right? I think at the moment a lot of exchanges are happy to prioritize altcoins that are going to give them a short-term revenue boost versus Lightning, where it's been hard to generate revenue from that. Early on there weren't many people using it. Even today there are more people using it, but fees are it's nearly free to use the Lightning Network. It's a lot harder, I think, to build a to capture a market, right, where you can maybe capture a Dogecoin market or another shitcoin market a little easier if you add a new pair to your exchange, and you can charge the fees that Coinbase charges. Maybe they're a little higher than what you could do on Lightning. What was the thought process there? How did you come to decide that it was important to integrate Lightning?
I think just a big background on me. So I joined the company probably mid 2017, just before the big bull run to 20k. And even when I joined, obviously the Lightning paper had been out already for a few years, probably, and it came out in 2015. So it was already, Danny was well aware of it and kind of teaching me it as I joined. I was brand new to the industry. So we kind of more from a technological interest, because we're both techies. It's, the Lightning Network is fascinating. So we're very aware of it, keeping up to date with it. And when they launched on the mainnet in Feb 18, was it? It would be, wasn't it?
January. We got on
we got it on in March.
January, wasn't it?
January, yeah. So we were one of the first nodes there. We opened a channel in March, I think, with Blockstream, and bought some stickers. And it was just cool technology, really. We always knew we'd eventually integrate it into the business. It's just we had to wait until it was at a stable point, I suppose. So we started with our payment gateway in the year after, was it?
End of 2019.
End of 2019, we integrated it into our payment gateway, because obviously Lightning is trying to be the payment rails for Bitcoin, so it made sense in terms of businesses accepting Bitcoin. At the time, I think, mempool congestions and all that kind of thing, it just kind of made sense for merchants wanting to accept low value payments over Bitcoin. Lightning was the answer. It solved a lot of issues from a merchant point of view. And then once we were happy with that and happy with our infrastructure, we eventually brought it into the exchange for our users to be able to receive in and send out. So it was kind of a natural progression of a piece of tech we were both excited and interested in, really, I would say. Yeah.
I think as Zakk touched on there was heavy personal interest, I think, in some of it. And I guess, as you touched on there, back in 2015, 16 times, once I started to get my head around what Lightning was and what it was potentially going to become, you start to realize, what was the point in all these altcoins? They're all trying to be payment rails on layer one, and they were never going to work in the way that Bitcoin could scale with Lightning. So it became, for me, a one horse race, and that was the personal interest. Then myself and Zakk got moving, and we were throwing up Lightning nodes, breaking things, playing around, until we eventually could bring it into a real business use case, I guess.
Yeah. Right.
Back in the reckless days.
Yeah.
Well, the first use case there of allowing merchants to accept Bitcoin on Lightning seems like a great one, especially for an exchange where you can then also allow a merchant to swap back into, pounds or dollars or whatever, euros, any fiat currency they want to eliminate volatility, right? Like, did you have that in mind as like a good synergy there, where you can accept payments for basically free, and then also, because you're an exchange, let someone flip into whatever currency they want to kind of avoid that volatility?
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what we do at the minute. So we do that for GBP and for Euro. So we did that already, obviously, with the Bitcoin side, but then the Lightning side allowed it's instant settlement. There's no waiting around for confirmations and so on. So it did bring that advantageous side to it, as well as, obviously, from the customer perspective, it's cheaper. And back in 2019, granted, the UX of Lightning wasn't what it is today, and it was a little bit of a struggle. And I think the introduction to the gateway was kind of our way of dipping our toes in, as Zakk touched on there, and kind of allowing us to build out the infrastructure while testing it in a real world environment, knowing that there's not going to be, we do appreciate, and we're not naive enough or short-sighted enough to understand that we're not going to turn it on and there's going to be millions of customers using Lightning overnight. It will take time, but it was all about finding the use cases initially to allow us to test and build out the infrastructure, and then slowly roll that out further and further and further into where we are today, and the state of Lightning, I guess, today around the world. Obviously, a country has adopted it with El Salvador. I think we're seeing Tonga are going to be a second or maybe even third or fourth by the time the year end comes. There's countries out there now, and there's real use cases out there now for Lightning. So it's a completely different world, I guess, to where we were 3 years ago. To where we are now.
Yeah.
What was that?
Just touching on that as well. I know you mentioned like it's easier for merchants to flip back into GBP or Euro, but it also solved a small issue of allowing these merchants to use Lightning without having to run their own node, and they don't have to convert that back to on-chain Bitcoin. So because some of the pros of being a custodial service rather than a non-custodial services, we do all the infrastructure for the merchant, so it's just one Bitcoin wallet. They didn't have to separate it out basically for their Lightning funds and that kind of thing.
Right.
So in terms of UX, that helped, I think, as well, in terms of bringing back, that the Bitcoin they accept via Lightning. If they didn't want to flip it, they had it on chain as well, and could withdraw on chain from us.
That makes sense. Yeah. And talk to me about that pitch to merchants back when you first rolled out Lightning. How were you telling merchants this was a thing they should use? It seemed like you had an easier infrastructure onboarding than if you were to ask them to run their own node and set their own infrastructure up. But what were some of those challenges then, and how has that progressed to today? Have you seen? Is it now easier to onboard merchants? Are merchants coming to you? Is it what's that transition been like?
Yeah, it's a good question, Owen, because back in 2019, especially, I think we were still very early. We're still early now, I think, from even the feedback we get and the conversations we're having. But 2019 was a completely different conversation to today. We quite honestly struggled for a lot of the conversations, trying to explain to them Bitcoin, and not only then Bitcoin, you're explaining to them Lightning. We'd just come off the back, I guess, still of the 2017 altcoins and ICOs and so on, and we were kind of coming into the territory of DeFi and a few little. Still some altcoins, smart contracts, and this side of things were starting to crop up. So a lot of the time, the conversations were had to be very educational and very. We had to explain a lot in terms of why we're only a Bitcoin on there, why we have Lightning on there, and trying to explain them pieces. For the majority of the time, I guess a lot of the clients we were talking to, it was difficult to onboard them. We were coming out of the ICO, the altcoin time period, where we would then hit a bear market in 2018 and 2019. We were still in the kind of a bear market. And for the most part, a lot of people didn't really want to talk to us. So this is UK focused as well. So it was mainly UK merchants we were talking to. We struggled, quite honestly, for a long period of time in terms of onboarding new merchants. It got to probably just after the financial crash, 2020 March, and the price started to pick up again. We had the halving, things started to move a little bit more. It was probably towards the end of 2020 when we really started to see merchants actually becoming more receptive to it and receptive to the conversations. We started to onboard. We were looking more in industries that were, I guess, people will class as high risk, so e-gaming, CBD, and things like that, where they're generally always first movers on any technology because they take the risks in a higher risk industry than your general high street shop or e-commerce company. So we'd moved in that area quite strongly. Rivalry.com, who are a big esports company, they're now public on the Canadian Stock Exchange, $100 million market cap or whatever they are these days. I can't quite remember. They went live with us back in summer 2020, wasn't it? I think?
Yeah.
Summer 2020 with Bitcoin, with Lightning payments and so on. And they were very, very, again, they were one of the first movers, a very decent size esports, e-gaming company. But the payments were slow, and we were getting a handful initially of transactions coming through. And over time, that's picked up heavily. So now it's they're one of our bigger merchants in terms of the amount of transactions they're doing and going through us. But that took 18 months to build up that traction and build up the user base that are actively using Bitcoin and Lightning payments consistently through that.
Right.
So coming into 2021, we still have conversations with the merchants, and there still is a lot of education for the mainstream merchants. The higher risk industries such as e-gaming, CBD adult industry, that side of things, they are more coming towards them than we're having to go to them, because they are now receptive to it and they're starting to make the move. We had a big push over the last couple of months in the Isle of Man. So the Isle of Man, just for those listening that are not sure, it's a tiny little island just off the coast of the UK. From the window where we're sat, we can normally see the Lake District and the UK from the window, but it's very foggy today, so we can't see much. But we had a push over here just in terms of similar to what you're saying there about trying to figure out what the merchants' appetite is like, really. So we pushed out to all the local merchants that are physical merchants, so like little cafes and restaurants, car showrooms, car sales rooms. Made that approach probably about 3 to 6 months ago, wasn't it? 6 months ago when we started to really roll that out. And initially it was a little bit of a hard sale, should we say, to get them on board and get them moving. The last 3 months has really picked up, and you just have the conversation with them and they're in. Some of them are bought into Bitcoin, some of them are seeing other businesses here. We have one of the car companies here that sold 5 or 6 cars now, I think, for Bitcoin. And they are generally high value, £50,000 plus cars, generally. So the other car companies obviously are seeing that, and people are going to this particular car company because they want to pay in Bitcoin. So they're getting new customer base based off just accepting Bitcoin payments. So I think as that, I don't want to call it FOMO, but the sort of competitive angle, the people see their competitors doing something and gaining something, an advantage, other people are following suit. So I think we're starting to see that at a local small level at the minute, where businesses are beginning to accept it because the competitor is and they don't want to miss out. So they're all starting to snowball a little bit and accept it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll start to roll that out in the UK as well, and that will start to become more of a factor to onboard merchants and make the conversation, I guess, easier.
Yeah, adding to that, I suppose, historically we've seen businesses want to accept it, maybe not for the wrong reasons, but more for a PR angle of they'll get in the news and that kind of thing. And I think we are slowly seeing the shift of companies that less want to do that and more, are interested in the payment side of things. And like I said, their competitors are accepting it, selling products, so they feel like they need to as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think it really does. It needs that once they see it works and other people are making use of it and it's growing businesses, they want to jump on, they want to do the next big thing, aren't they? I guess is the angle, and we are seeing that.
Are you seeing any discrepancy between the merchants coming on board and the willingness of customers to use it? Are merchants excited about the possibility of receiving Bitcoin, but do customers have that same excitement about giving Bitcoin and paying Bitcoin? Are the two equal, or do you notice one side is more favors this Lightning idea than the other?
I guess a little bit of both. I think you've got the right thought process there, the angle of, I think some people at the minute the customer end, they may not want to pay in Bitcoin because they want to hold the Bitcoin. So you've got that resistance angle there. Whereas, quite honestly though, we've just, today, I'm trying not to give information. I'm trying to think what I can say and what I can't. But we've seen some high value products today. Was it £45,000 one went through today for a particular product on an e-commerce website? So people, even though the Bitcoin price and the dip, people are still spending Bitcoin at of high value as well for an e-commerce product on a website.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, I guess, how many are not wanting to pay in Bitcoin because they don't want to spend the Bitcoin, for example, which I can come on to in a second. We are seeing still a lot of people still spending Bitcoin. So as a payment, it is working, but I think it works in particular scenarios better. So for cross-border payments, we have a lot of merchants that have clients all around the world and need to receive payments from various Asian countries or like the Americas side of things. So we're seeing payments coming in from them to what would be, say, a UK or an Isle of Man company. So that's becoming very popular.
Yeah.
And similar with the esports, as I touched on before, them sort of industries are becoming more and more popular with the payments. But I think one of the angles for what you touched on there, people don't want to necessarily spend their Bitcoin, so there's some resistance there to the actual payments coming through the system. Can be alleviated a little bit with the likes of Strike and that sort of product, where it's starting to become more popular, that product, and we're starting to a particular products we're just testing at the minute that will be hopefully out in the coming weeks, if not months, where the customer will be able to hold effectively GBP or euros with ourselves, similar to the Strike scenario. It's tied to the bank account in some way. And then when they make the payment via Lightning or Bitcoin, it's automatically pulling their GBP, converting into the Bitcoin or the Lightning, and sending that across to make the payment. So at that point, it starts to become more like your everyday bank account, I guess, and everyday usage. So I think we're still early stages, and these are the products that are starting to come out and starting to move. We'll see more of that.
Yeah, I think in terms of encouraging end users as well to want to spend rather than use their normal credit card is, the merchants like it better because obviously it's cheaper than their normal credit card processing fees. So the merchants really have to try and incentivize their end users to pay in it as well, whether that's, giving freebies out if you pay over Lightning, or actually charging less for the good if you pay via Lightning. So it kind of works both ways there, because the merchant should want everyone to pay over Bitcoin Lightning because, our fees are significantly lower than standard credit card processing fees. And they get their money instantly. It's instant settlement, whereas, standard credit card companies, you don't get your money for 7+ days.
Right.
Yeah. That is actually one of the pieces of feedback we've had from merchants, that when I think a big part we'll talk to the merchants and be in the process of signing them up, and they're asking the questions. And one of the questions obviously is fees, is always a heavy one for them. Our fees at the minute is just a 1% flat fee. There's no monthly minimums. There's no yearly charges. There's no setup fees. I think a lot of them we've had in the past have been put off initially because they think, it's just another payment method, and they have to pay a upfront setup fee, and then they have to pay monthly minimums, and they're so used to that with all the other processors that they have for Visa and MasterCard capabilities that they expect that. But once we tell them that there's no monthly, there's no minimums, there's no ongoing cost, it's purely a 1% on your transaction coming through. That's flipped to GBP and into your, as Zakk says there, into your bank account within 24 hours rather than waiting 7+ days for it. That has changed their perception, I think, quite a lot of Bitcoin and the possibilities. However, they still need to, as Zakk touched on there, they need to incentivize the end customer to come on and use Bitcoin as well.
Right.
So there's still work to be done there, definitely, and there's still education to be done. But it's getting better as time goes on, without a doubt.
Okay, so how large do you think the Lightning payment ecosystem is worldwide? Let's do a guess here of like all Lightning. So not like payment volume happening on the Lightning network, because that could include rebalancing or just sending money between different channels. But I'm talking about like real merchant payments or remittances as well. Those two. How much volume do you think is happening maybe on a yearly basis right now?
I have absolutely no idea.
I think I've heard you ask this question to one of your other guests, haven't you? And I think there's a interesting answer to that one as well. I think it's hot. One of the beauties of Bitcoin and Lightning, or of Lightning, there's no answer to that. We cannot answer that. And going forwards, even in the future, we're not really necessarily going to be able to answer that without the data from companies like ourselves. So honestly don't have an answer at the minute. I think if you'd have asked me this pre El Salvador, we've been saying fairly low. I know El Salvador uptake has not been significant in terms of percentage. I think where is it 11-12% of merchants are now seeing it on a regular basis. I think was the stat that we saw recently. And I know the Bitcoin Beach guys and some of them, some of their volumes that they've been seeing in El Salvador are good, significant, or seemingly significant. I think globally, El Salvador is probably the more popular place. Bitrefill and the likes are probably the more popular places. We are seeing it probably still at a small scale from a Lightning perspective. Are we at 15-20% now of our gateway orders?
Yeah.
Probably Lightning at the minute.
15 to 20% of what?
Of our gateway orders, payment gateway orders going through. So CoinCorner's checkout. So they're Lightning at the minute. That we believe it'll start to move faster towards on the upside for Lightning, I think, as we roll out the physical point of sale devices a little bit more, because that's going to be the focus of the payments as a physical point of sale using Lightning. Obviously, Bitcoin doesn't really work necessarily for that, for the confirmation side. So Lightning is the way to do that. But obviously, we need the adoption from the merchants, and then from the end consumer, it needs to be convenient enough for them to make that payment rather than use their Visa cards.
So
that's, I guess, what we're working on.
If 15 or 20% of the payments going through your checkout feature are on Lightning already, what's the remaining 80-85%? Is that Bitcoin, or is it also fiat currencies?
Just Bitcoin.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so maybe now is a good time to transition to some of the things you guys are working on with respect to Lightning, and some of the new products you guys are thinking about, and where you think this goes from here. Right? You got maybe a fifth of the volume going through your checkout feature is Lightning. How far do you think that can go? What are some of the holes in the market that you want to tackle and you want to improve?
Yep. Sure. So convenience is the key, I think, the user experience. That's something that we know will happen over time and get better and improve over time. And I think that's been a little bit of a sticking point for Bitcoin along the way, where we, particularly for point of sale purchases, it's not as smooth as your Visa cards and MasterCards these days. So that's something we're turning the focus onto that I'll come to in a second. And I guess the online perspective, again, we are trying to make it more convenient along the way. Lightning obviously is the introduction for that, and removing the confirmations. But I think, again, on the flip side of that, the end customer still needs to have the UX experience and capabilities similar, if not better, to what we have today in the world today. So that is taking a little bit of time, and will always take time. Any new technology does. So it's not going to happen overnight, but we are seeing major improvements along the way. One of the ones we're looking at for point of sale, so in-person payments. So you'll go to a coffee shop and you want to pay with Lightning. You're not going to want to pay Bitcoins, obviously, so it's going to be a Lightning payment. What we're used to every day, particularly in the UK, the UK is heavy on this. I know the US is starting to see it rolled out, but the contactless payments, where you have your Visa card and you tap the point of sale device and you make the payment by a contactless card, effectively like an offline payment. We're so used to that in the UK. It's convenient, it's quick, it's easy. There's no hassle. You don't even have to remember your PIN or anything. It's a quick tap and go. What we've tried to do is reinvent that in some way, without wanting to sound like we're reinventing the wheel. We're reinventing that, but on the Lightning network rather than on Visa or MasterCard network. So we've been working a lot with the NFC capabilities, which is near field communication technology, to allow you, that's what the contactless cards you see every day or use every day, the technology behind them. So we've started to introduce this, and we're looking to roll this out in the next couple of months. That'll allow the CoinCorner customers to have their own card or their own Lightning card, which is NFC capable, and they'll be able to go into a shop, into a cafe, and say they want to pay with Lightning. The merchant pulls out their point of sale device, which is NFC and Lightning capable. You'll be able to just tap the card as you do your Visa card, and it makes the Lightning payment via the Lightning network instantly to the merchant, and is paid and done in a couple of seconds, generally a couple of seconds.
So there's no connection to Visa or MasterCard with this card, right? This is a purely Lightning card.
Yeah. That's one of the that's such a big point for us. So I know Zakk touched earlier on about us being the custodial company, and I know obviously it kind of goes against Bitcoin's mentality, but we are also in terms of the mindset of non-custodial. So we wanted to build something. The way we built this and what we're trying to build is more that it's not something that's a CoinCorner product. It is a CoinCorner product, but it's something that everybody else in the industry can replicate and make use of, and also interact in an interoperable way with ourselves and with the rest of the Lightning network. So using LNURL, which is becoming quite a popular standard at the minute, and rolling that out to most Lightning wallets generally have that capability now, and starting to get NFC capabilities in them. The way we've created it at the minute, it will be the card, for example, will be able to be tied to your CoinCorner account and pull directly from your Bitcoin balance, or as well your GBP or Euro balance. So you could actually pay with that card. It can turn your GBP you may hold with us into Bitcoin automatically and make the Lightning payment to the merchant instantly. So within a couple of seconds, it's made that transaction and done. And you never had to hold Bitcoin or be exposed to Bitcoin. So it's all across the Lightning network, from your own, let's call it, bank account, into the merchant's account within seconds, and settled to the merchant within seconds, never needing to be exposed to the Bitcoin volatility for the merchant or for the end consumer as well, if you wanted to do it that way. All on the Lightning network. Doesn't touch Visa, MasterCard, any other networks. It's completely free and outside that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think that was a big point for, I know, me and Danny, was like, how do we differentiate this from just another closed source system? Like, say, so having the ability to open source it and allow anyone to set up their own card with their own node at home.
Sorry, that's what I was trying to
sorry. Allowing anyone to set up their own card with, let's say, their Umbrel node at home. So it's essentially, we've heard the saying, Bitcoin allows you to be your own bank. Well, this is really bringing that into reality. Lightning is allowing you to be your own bank here, in terms of issuing your own card to yourself that you can go out in the world and spend with, and it's coming directly from your node at home. And if you don't want to take that route, because not everyone in the world wants to go the non-custodial route, you can also use services like ourselves and get it tied to your CoinCorner account, for just easier UX.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just flashing one of the cards for anyone who can see the video. Cool. It's just the usual wizard which everybody knows and loves. But that's, for example, I think this particular one, I've got so many cards in front of me now, I forgot which one's tied to which account. But I think this one at the minute was the one that's tied to my Umbrel node at home. So that can pull directly from my Umbrel personal balance and personal Bitcoin via Lightning, and I could make that payment at the CoinCorner merchant. So one of the merchants here in the Isle of Man, I can go and pay using my Umbrel node just via this contactless card. So effectively, it's an offline payment for the most part from my side, and it's interoperable with non-custodial and obviously custodial going forwards. And it's effectively creating or recreating, however you want to call it, the Visa network, effectively, and it's removing that necessity for Visa and MasterCard and their whole network that they're spending billions on every year to maintain and charging X amount of fees to everybody. This starts to eliminate Visa and MasterCard's business model, or current business model, shall we say. And I think it's certainly something that they're paying attention to, and they're going to have to start to look to whether they pivot and start offering services around something similar to this.
Yeah, that is really cool. I haven't seen anyone building like a Lightning specific card like that. And I wonder how this progresses. Like if you have other exchanges or other kind of Bitcoin businesses that want to take part in this, let's say there's another competitor that has their own set of merchants. Is it easy to link up your Lightning card with those merchants so that you're like the CoinCorner Lightning card that you guys have been building, could that then be used at the point of sale terminals hosted by other exchanges or other businesses in the Bitcoin space?
Yeah, completely. It's all based around LNURL protocol. So any merchant out there that might have NFC capabilities in their app, so BTC Pay Server, for example, I know that has all the LNURL capabilities, does it?
I think so, yeah, I think so.
That just needs the NFC capability adding in, and if you add the NFC piece in, which is open source, obviously, and that's something that we potentially may look at to go and contribute and complete that. And then any BTC Pay server merchant that has that installed, whether it be also on the website, which we'll come to in a second, or physical point of sale, you would then be able to use the card, and it's interoperable in all angles.
Not even merchants as well, just Bitcoin wallets. So if you're paying a friend, for example, I can pay Danny, you can get up his Android phone has NFC enabled, so I can just scan the card on his phone, open his preferred Lightning wallet, and I can pay him right there and then.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
So yeah, that's already working, and it does work. We've been using the cards and testing that, and you can do that with Phoenix, Wallet Satoshi, Moon, or not Moon. I don't think they did that at the minute.
No.
How did you guys come up with this idea? Like, where was the inspiration here? Is it just kind of trying to replicate and improve upon what Visa and MasterCard had done? Or are there any other Bitcoin companies doing anything similar that you guys have seen?
So, yeah, I think it was a bit of a combination. It was literally walking out of the shop down the street, wasn't it? Myself and Zakk were... I'd just gone and paid with my Visa card contactless, and the prior couple of days we've been talking about LNURL and Lightning things, and then I think I just asked the question to Zakk, is this possible to be able to do this with contactless and the card? And then we just bounced the idea back and forwards for a little bit. A couple of days later we realized that yeah, it's capable. One of the guys called Ben Ark, who I don't know if you've seen in this space at the minute, pretty much working on very much open source software, and he's been doing the point of sale devices, which are all LNURL focused, so like offline point of sale devices for merchants. He actually created one, was it back in 2018 or 2019? It might have been.
Yeah, he did like a proof of concept video, didn't he?
Yeah, which was showing like these stickers doing NFC and making Lightning payments. Was it using LNURL? It wasn't using LNURL, wasn't it? It was when LNURL very first came out, effectively, and he was trying to do it as a proof of concept. So we then saw that and we realised that, yes, this is possible. So we started to snowball the idea from there. I think one of the things he didn't have originally was more of the security aspect of things. So when you're tapping the card, it's the same. If you go in and tap your LNURL URL, it's the same URL basically that someone's being directed to. And so that means that the merchant in theory could record that URL and then you disappear out the shop and they can then reuse that URL and steal your money out your wallet. So you obviously need to prevent that. So one of the things we were looking at, that was where we spent a little bit of time trying to figure out how we prevent that. And we found another memory chip as such for NFC. NFC has a range of capable pieces of technology within it. And one of them allows us to effectively store, the best way to think about it, it's kind of like an API keys. So you almost have like your private key on the card, which is physically on the card. And every time you tap the card onto a device and it generates a URL for somebody to hit, for LNURL to work, it generates, it kind of hashes the code with the private key. And then on the other side, say at our end, on our CoinCorner's web server, we've also got the private key. We can recreate that hash and validate that the request is a legitimate request. So we know that it's a legitimate request from that customer. And every time they tap it, it's a completely brand new URL every time. So you can't just reuse that URL. It's a one-time use URL to make the payment. So it was kind of, we went around the houses a little bit with that, didn't we? Trying to get to the bottom of how we did that. And eventually we've figured that one out. It will be rolled out to the CoinCorner customers in the next month, we hope. And at that point as well, we'll start to roll that out in an open source manner as well and let everybody else in on how that's done. And hopefully they'll all start to interact in the same way, which, as we touched on earlier, we have it working with Umbrel, so I can use my Umbrel node and card to actually pay at CoinCorner merchants, even though I've got a completely non-custodial solution set up there with a card that is completely non-custodial as well and nothing to do with CoinCorner. So we know it works. It's just now a case of rolling that out to the public and to the community and letting them run wild with it.
That's amazing. I'd love to chat about the future of Lightning payments and what kind of standards you guys think it's going to be built on. Because you guys have touched on LNURL. I've seen a lot of conversation on Twitter about Lightning addresses. You guys have Lightning addresses available for customers, right? So it'd be like Danny at CoinCorner.com, right?
Yeah.
There's also this discussion about Bolt 12s. I don't know enough about the technical side of this stuff, but I would love to kind of hear a breakdown of like, how do you compare these different standards, and which direction do you think Lightning payments are going to head over time?
Yep.
No, go on, Danny. Yeah.
I'll be the controversial one. So the whole the Lightning addresses. So we have them. Again, this is one of them touching on the previous question about the convenience and making it more convenient and easier for customers to use Lightning and make payments. So the Lightning address, it honestly is so simple and so genius. It works so well. Internally with the staff as well now, it's much easier for, I know Zakk at CoinCorner.io is his payment address, and I can quickly type that into one of my phones and pay him for the dinner he's just bought or whatever that may be.
People just seem to get it easier, don't they? Rather than, oh, this is a QR code that you need to scan and send me this Lightning. People are saying, no, it's like an email address, but you use it to pay me over Lightning. It just clicks with people, I think, a bit better.
It has been. I think the adoption and the ease of use there is so much better than, I guess, with the current UX. So it's an improvement and it's a step forward, which is good. The Bolt 12 situation and the LNURL, the LNURL framework as such, or what's been created, schema, what you want to call that. So I guess the industry has required certain ways to be able to interact in a standard way for everybody to interact with Lightning and make certain products like the cards we're looking to do, like the Lightning addresses and so on. So LNURL got adopted not very quickly, but it got adopted early on, I think, by a lot of the wallets, and there's started to be a bit more of a pickup over recent months, if not year now. And the technical arguments, I guess, in terms of Bolt 12 is Bolt 12 has been coming for a while now, and it was, I guess, it's designed to do very similar things in terms of repeat pay. I think the whole initial... Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong here with this, Zakk, as well, but initially the conversation was around repeat payments, or a static invoice,
like a tip jar,
to receive Lightning payments,
like a tip jar.
Yeah, effectively, yeah. So there was this whole conversation around that, and I know then Bolt 12 became developed and focused around that, and LNURL kind of came with that, plus lots of other additional things on top of that as well. The arguments, I guess, around the community at the minute is the self-sovereignty of it, the non-custodial angle of Bolt 12. Bolt 12, they're trying to build into the Lightning protocol, so it's actually built into the Lightning node, so it's capable of being able to do similar functionality to what LNURL can do, but LNURL requires, let's call it a web server, effectively, as a middle layer to be able to translate the information into what it needs to be, what the node needs to do in terms of whether it needs to make a payment or give it a new invoice or whatever that may be. People are, I guess, arguing against LNURL from it being on the protocol kind of helps a little bit with from a privacy perspective, and the technical capabilities of not having to run your own web server in there. I see both sides. I guess I see the Bolt 12 angle, which makes sense, and I'm all for that and keeping self-sovereign. But at the same time, it's not capable of doing certain things that LNURL can do. Maybe with additional features built on top of it in the future, maybe it can.
What are some of those things it can't do right now?
Lightning addresses would be one, as far as I'm aware. There's nothing. I don't know if that's on. Rusty is the guy that's been kind of pushing or leading Bolt 12. He's done a very good job in building what he's done there. And I'm a big fan of Rusty. I like his dry, weird sense of humor on Twitter, I think is the best way to describe him. But and what he's built there is great. But I think it'll be a little bit of a case of let the market decide. If Bolt 12 comes into play, and the other implementations, so you kind of have three implementations, three main Lightning implementations with C Lightning, Eclairs, and LND. I think LND is the primary one. About 60%, I think, is it, of Lightning nodes out there running LND. Bolt 12 is at the minute just on C Lightning. And I think the guys between the three of them implementations generally have an agreement between themselves that if two of the implementations implement a particular product, like Bolt 12 as an example, the third one will follow and everybody will try and roll it out. At the minute, Bolt 12 is only being adopted by C Lightning, and Eclair have kind of said they'll do something in some manner, and LND are kind of just sitting back and waiting to see what happens. So I think the market will probably decide, I think, for this part, and rightly or wrongly, I think the UX on LNURL is far superior in the products and the UX it can bring in comparison to Bolt 12 right now. It does lose that self-sovereign angle. However, this is the bit that I'm not sure. I'd love a conversation maybe with Rusty and with some of the other guys around Bolt 12 and LNURL. The angle is you don't have to run a web server on Bolt 12, whereas with LNURL you do. However, running an Umbrel node, as we know, I think it's about 12,000 nodes out there now.
Over 15,000.
Umbrel node. It's 15,000. There we go. So it's a massive amount of the network right now running an Umbrel node. So with LNURL, you can build that into your umbrella. There's an app on there called LN Bits, which is Ben Ark's app, and that actually gives you the capabilities of some of this LNURL side of things. And effectively, you don't have to run a web server. So the Umbrel node is in itself the web server piece of it, and that's running it. And you can run that over Tor. As I was touching on before, one of the cards, the NFC cards that I've got, that's tied to my Umbrel node at home, and I'm not running anything more than an Umbrel node with an app on it. And that app is open source and free to anyone, and it's running over Tor to be able to make the payment to one of the merchants here at CoinCorner. So Bolt 12 right now wouldn't be able to do that, even in the future as that becomes a potential use case. You still have to run with Bolt 12. You'd still be having to run your own Lightning node. So, as you can say there, 15,000 out of, how many we got at the minute? Is it 30,000?
Yeah, it's about 30.
We just hit an all-time high, didn't we?
About 30,000 total nodes. I think only about 20,000 of them have channels, though.
Right, okay. So of that 30,000, then 50% of them are already running Umbrel with all the capabilities to do all the LNURL side over Tor. So from a privacy angle or a technical capability angle, there's not really an argument there, because there's already 50% of the network running on that as is, and it's a simple, Umbrel nodes are fairly simple to set up and run. So I think if you're going to run your own, from a technical capability perspective, I think it's probably more difficult to run your own Lightning node outside of Umbrel than it is to just throw up an Umbrel node. So it's probably technically easier to run Umbrel. And from the privacy angle, you can run the capabilities that we're talking about here over Tor, which again give it that privacy angle. Because I know I kind of missed the conversation about the IP address stuff, the Bolt 12 and LNURL argument, and people were saying, "Oh, your IP is exposed if you're using LNURL, whereas if you use Bolt 12, it wouldn't be exposed." But you can use LNURL over Tor, which would then obviously hide your IP address anyway. So it's arguments kind of going around in circles. I think from our perspective and the way we'll go at it, what's there in front of us right now and what's the use case for our customer base is LNURL has them capabilities and it's allowing us to build these products and make them convenient real world use case products for our customer base, which is where we're going. If Bolt 12 comes along the way, we'll build that into our system, of course, alongside it. And if the market wants, they can adopt that particular process as well. So I think it's...
I think I see a place for both. Both, and the market will decide which is the most popular, really. People will always build on whatever's there. Like ourselves, if we think of an idea that's only possible via Bolt 12, we would build on top of Bolt 12.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I know that when making Lightning payments today, typically it's the user that decides whether they're going to send money on Lightning, whether to send money on Bitcoin. There are now some wallets that I've been using that let you in the background kind of deposit Lightning and then send on chain, or they kind of like abstract away that whole process. Do you think that over time we get to a point where users never make that decision at all? Like, do you think that it's going to become, will it be the responsibility of the apps and the exchanges to make that swap between on-chain and Lightning and decide, if it's a $10 payment, maybe it's on Lightning. If it's a $10,000 payment, maybe it's on chain. Or do you think like that seems to me like it's a user experience challenge still, that the user has to decide, do I want to use Lightning? Do I want to use Bitcoin? What are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think that over time users will not have to make that decision? Will it just be one simple, you just move Bitcoin and then, the app or exchange decides on the back end whether that's going to be moved on chain or on Lightning?
Yeah, I think so. I think we are slowly seeing that kind of functionality in some of the Lightning wallets. So the likes of Phoenix, I think you can just scan either a Lightning invoice or an on-chain address and it'll just work out what it is. Yeah, it'll let the user know it's an on-chain address, but it does allow you to then just to click send and it will send on-chain for you. Whether I do think, I probably agree with what you said first there, in the future the user probably will not know if it's on-chain or Lightning, which is probably good UX, unless they want to. I'm sure there'll always be advanced wallets and people wanting to take those decisions into their own hands. But I think we are seeing some wallets, especially the new ones, kind of navigating towards that kind of functionality.
Yeah. I think that the Strike products-esque style where is a good potential example for what we're talking about there, and it's pulling from your US dollar into effectively translating into Bitcoin and moving the Bitcoin across Lightning or Bitcoin on chain to the other side of the world or whatever that may be. So I think similar to that, where we will start to see the UX become better in that respect, and similar to where we see this is, I guess, one of our focuses over the coming years for CoinCorner is to focus on creating the real world products and use cases that people are used to every day and the convenience, and bringing that into the Bitcoin aspect and the Lightning aspect. So you go into a shop down the road and you pay with your Visa card, and actually take that back. You go on holiday and you go into a shop and you go into another country, your base currency normally is pounds, but you go into a shop and pay with your card and you tap your card and it's paying in euros to the merchant, but you're not fussy to that. You're not really bothered. You're just tapping your card, paying with the card, and it's making the payment and doing what it needs to do in the background. And the end customer is not privy to that information of what's going on there, and they don't need to know it. It's simple. It's convenient. So I think that's where we'll eventually get to, where the customer could have a CoinCorner account and they may have whatever their base currency is or whatever currency they have in there they are holding, and they'll be able to go and tap their Lightning card in El Salvador or in the US or in Hong Kong or wherever that may be, and you'll be able to pay automatically, and what's going on in the background there, whether it's on chain, whether it's on Lightning, whether it's converting to X, Y, and Z currency, all that will just be done and pushed in place by the companies like ourselves and the merchants, rather than the end consumer having to worry about that or think about it. So I think that will definitely be the way forwards. I think we're seeing stablecoins starting to become a little bit of a use case in that angle as well, where we know the likes of El Salvador, I know Strike with Argentina recently, and there's a heavy conversation around stablecoins. I don't believe the stablecoins are of use at the minute in the payments perspective, because Ethereum, what was the one we did last week? We did a Tether transaction last week on ERC20 tokens, so on Ethereum, and it cost $41, was it, to make the transaction? That's not a usable payment method that the world can use today.
Do you think stablecoins ever come to Lightning?
Yeah, exactly that. So I think the next up and the next stage is, we know people are working on Tether on Lightning, and that's something we're going to also work on and work towards as well. So eventually you'll be able to send via Lightning, whether that be the stable coins of Tether or US dollar, or whether that's other territories, GBP or Euro in stable coins as well. And they'll be able to be interoperable because they'll be built on Lightning, instant, pretty much free.
I think that just goes straight back to what I said earlier about being your own bank. So as soon as I can have stable coins on my Umbrel node at home. I am my own bank at that point. It's not just a Bitcoin bank. I've got fiat on there essentially, in terms of stable coins.
And you can tie your card to that effectively be your own bank with your own debit card effectively, which is attached to your Umbrel node with, as Zakk says there, whether that be US dollar Tether you're holding there or whether that be Bitcoin you're holding. For the users, I guess, that want that flexibility and that advanced option to be able to manage it all and do it all yourself, it'll be there still. But I think for the mass majority, we'll just want the quick, easy, convenient way. Will be services like ourselves and Strike and the likes out there.
Okay, so right now I think there's about $150 billion of stablecoin kind of market cap. That's across a lot of the major stablecoins, some on different chains too, right? Tether's not only on ERC20, but it's, I think, on Tron and a couple others. How much of that do you think migrates to Lightning? If it's possible to put, stablecoins on Lightning, if this happens in the next, 6-12 months, how much of that $150 billion market do you think eventually moves to Lightning? And I mean, I guess one caveat here is that in the meantime, the market could very well expand beyond 150. But I'll let you run with that question. And yeah.
I guess for the Bitcoin maximalist to me would say everything. Why have Tether, for example, on Ethereum with the ERC20 token, where I'm paying $41 to make a single transaction when I can do that on Lightning for fractions of a penny? As a payment method, it makes no sense to be on Ethereum. It makes no sense to be on Tron. It makes no sense to be on these alternatives. I think at the minute people are using it as the store of value as such, or moving from a more volatile currency such as Bitcoin into a more stable one such as dollar. And I think that's its use case at the minute, and moving Tether around exchanges from a trader's perspective, they're able to move Tether here, there and everywhere. And I think from a borderless transaction perspective as well, Tether is popular on a high value invoice basis for B2B perspective, which we see ourselves. But I think from a general use case, so there may still be in the future volume and liquidity as such on Ethereum and on Tron and the likes. But I think for the general day-to-day payments, if they're wanting to use that in El Salvador and Argentina and the likes, that's no good as a payment method. There, it needs to be instant for one, and it needs to be cheaper than the $41 we're paying per transaction, which is Lightning. So for me, that has to move to Lightning.
I think it should naturally migrate towards, the strongest, most secure base network, which we see as Bitcoin. Obviously, Lightning is secured by Bitcoin, and then along with Lightning, which is the cheapest, fee-wise option. So naturally, you would expect it to migrate to the superior network. How quick that happens is an unknown, obviously. But
yeah, I think we will go Tether on Lightning within 6 months region. I'm kind of visioning. And I think from that point, then again, with any new technology, it'll take time to roll out and to migrate across. Tether themselves are having a big push on bringing Tether to Lightning. So as we know, Tether are the biggest stablecoin out there, with the majority of that market cap of the 150 billion. And they are themselves having that push onto the Lightning network. So I would imagine their vision as well will be to slowly migrate everything away from Tron and away from Ethereum and onto the Lightning network side of things. So I believe that will be certainly the case for Tether. Maybe USDC and the other ones may take a little bit more time or a bit more resistance because they don't have the Lightning capabilities and functionality there yet. But as Zakk says there, not only the fees, but the actual what this is built on top of, which is Bitcoin, is more secure, stable than any of the others out there. So eventually, race to the bottom in some respects from the fee side, but also just towards the superior technology, I guess.
Now, you guys have had a lot of experience building on Lightning now and seeing how it impacts your business, and you guys have made it an integral part of what CoinCorner is. What would your pitch be to a business that's not yet on Lightning? Maybe it's an exchange, maybe it's an app in the Bitcoin space, or maybe it's just a traditional financial product. What's your pitch for why they should move onto Lightning now, and how it's going to benefit them from a business perspective, right? Because we talked earlier about how exchanges may be hesitant to jump into Lightning because maybe they can get higher revenue from adding a new token versus integrating Lightning. So how do you make that pitch make sense to a business today? from a business perspective, from a revenue perspective? What do you tell a business that's considering adding Lightning?
Do you want to go with a sensible approach, and I'll go with a controversial approach?
What's the sensible approach? You're the businessman here.
I think from an exchange perspective, the larger exchanges, we've seen Kraken, we've seen, they came out saying they were looking at it and don't really know what's happened there. They've kind of gone quiet. We've seen a lot of the other exchanges not adding it. I think from an exchange point of view and a revenue point of view, short-term revenue, shall we say, I think it makes sense for them because they're adding altcoin after altcoin and they're cycling them round, adding as many as they can, and they're making additional revenue and land-grabbing customers that might come from the Shiba Inu community or whatever that may be, and they're pulling them into their exchange. So short-term revenue, it starts to make sense. Long-term, it is adding technical debt in some respects, and it's adding overheads where it's not necessarily... or maybe again short-sighted in terms of what that revenue brings in against the overheads and costs that it could bring alongside it,
and the regulatory
from a regulatory, right? yeah. Regulatory is a massive issue with it because as we move forwards, a lot of these other tokens, coins are going to end up becoming, whether they're security tokens, whether they're whatever they may be. There's going to be regulatory clampdown in various ways, and a lot of these exchanges that have these coins tokens added, they have customers that have them, and it does become a burden, and it becomes an overhead and headache over the longer term. But I guess you don't see that until later down the lifetime and years down the line. So, but that's for them, their internal processes and their internal understanding and how their internal infrastructure is able to handle that sort of side of things. From a more high level business side, for me, again, we believe in Bitcoin being the long-term sustainable product with genuine substance behind it. The altcoins don't interest us in that respect. Okay, we might be losing short-term revenue for what we would see as a long-term gain, where we're effectively first movers in Lightning, which we believe is the long-term sustainable product. So by the time that the guys catch up, we've already built the infrastructure around it. We already have the core customer base which want to use Lightning and want to make use of it, and in the various ways we are already years ahead in our thinking in terms of what Lightning and what LNURL can do in comparison to these guys. These guys at the minute are just thinking about adding it to their exchange so the customers can send and receive from their balances in Lightning. We're thinking about building the NFC Lightning capable cards. We're thinking about interest accounts to customers. We're thinking about subscription models. We're thinking about streaming money in the respect of what we first heard back in 2013, 14, 15 time periods, where we're talking about streaming money and paying staff in Lightning rather than once a month. They're getting paid hourly as we're steps ahead already and starting to not only think about them products, we're actually building them products out, and them products will start to replace the Visas, the MasterCards, the Swifts, the Western Unions, the MoneyGrams. We're looking to replace them. So we're kind of going down from a CoinCorner perspective, and I think from our perspective there, we're looking at real world use case products and we're disrupting them. The exchanges are just adding shitcoins for adding shitcoins' sake to make short-term revenue, and their plan, I'm sure, going forwards will be to acquire companies like ourselves that may have that technical capabilities of Lightning in the future. As you see that, and we've seen that historically with big banks or big tech companies. The big tech companies, they get so big, they then acquire smaller companies for the technology and for what that brings, rather than try and build it themselves. So I think that's the bigger exchanges that are not adding Lightning. They're in a little bit of a race to monetize as much as possible short term and build as big a war chest as they can short term, and then they'll make use of that money by just acquiring the tech afterwards, and that'll slowly come in time. But we're I guess taking a slightly different approach, and we're not only thinking years ahead, we're building years ahead, I guess, of these guys at the minute.
I think as well, with the emergence of companies like Voltage, it becomes less of not a burden, but less of a technological resource in order to integrate. So if I can just spin up a node on Voltage, it takes away some of that headache of So, everyone's used to hosting their websites. Not many host in their office anymore on their own servers and that kind of thing. It's taken away that burden of infrastructure. So as it becomes easier with more services like that, there's kind of no excuse in terms of technological resource to integrate, which I know some of the big exchanges that's been their excuse. Whereas we know, even with ours, it doesn't take much really.
Yeah, I think a lot of the use cases or the arguments for all these altcoins as well are they're fast, cheaper, faster than Bitcoin, cheaper than Bitcoin, all this. Bring Lightning into the scenario and they're all redundant. So a lot of the coins that these guys are making their money on is made redundant in theory by Lightning. So if they add Lightning, they're just encouraging their current revenue stream to be made slightly more redundant. So it kind of goes against their short-term revenue plans as well, I guess, some part.
What are you guys both, I know we're running out of time, so maybe this will be the last question, but what are you both most excited about from a Lightning Network perspective? Like it could be applications, it could be new standards being built, it could be adoption from merchants. Across the board, what's the most exciting thing for you guys?
Jump first?
No, let me think for a second.
I think what we're already looking at doing, I think, is probably a big part for me, the disruption of the traditional finance. And that is exciting for me. With Bitcoin, you're separating money from state as the initial thing. And able to do that where we know, for example, with the NFC cards and the capabilities, we're able to, as a company, build around this, create this product and create innovation where if we wanted to do that with Visa, we've got to go and ask Visa permission to do this. And we've got to go through regulatory framework headaches with them. And, so many issues, PCI compliance, GDPR stuff, all of that can be slowly removed with Lightning capabilities, LNURL in particular, in the scenario I'm talking about there. So it allows companies like ourselves and it'll allow other companies around the world to innovate in ways that we traditionally have not been able to in the finance world. And that is, for me, I guess, a big part of the excitement I don't want to just say necessarily the finance world. Initially, it's the finance world, but for me, it's this disruption around all sorts of industries. And I think media is one I've always wanted to go and disrupt in some way. And that one's on my radar in the future years, maybe. And if we can use Lightning to do that, that's going to be my top priority, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with Danny there. But also, I'm looking forward to putting an end to all this altcoin FUD about, Bitcoin being slow and, expensive, where it's really not. And Lightning, I know Lightning's been around a while now, but, as the network grows, it kind of proves a lot of people wrong. I think me and Danny, so just to touch on an example, me and Danny were in a meeting with someone a few years ago. We were talking about Lightning and they called it fake tech. And then now sitting here several years later, the network the size it is, that person doesn't talk to us anymore. And
he couldn't explain why it's fake tech.
Yeah.
He just kept calling it fake tech, and no matter how many times
he
he
was
said,
shilling his
altcoin,
altcoin.
Why is it fake tech? Well, it doesn't work. I was like, yeah, well, it does because we're using it in the office, and it's just
to prove a lot of people wrong. I think El Salvador was a big part of that. A whole country adopting a Bitcoin standard with without Lightning that wouldn't be possible in terms of the payments. So more countries getting involved and just putting an end to all the FUD of the altcoins, I think.
Yeah, I think as well. Sorry, I'm throwing more in here. But there's, I know when we're seeing the layer 3 side of things, Impervious was one of them with the being built on Lightning in kind of a web perspective. I think them sort of ideas and them concepts we're seeing like Sphinx and other chat apps and things like that, where it's creating. It's disrupting other industries. This is why I'm saying it's not just financial for me as well. Sometimes it will branch off into other industries that can be disrupted. And I think that's part of my excitement. I'm not going to call it Web3. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But I think there's definitely room for more innovation going forwards with what we can potentially see here. I think initially the financial side needs to be built out from a UX and from a foundational perspective. But then I think what will come is the layer 3s and 4s and so on, which will be more disruptive, not just to the financial industry, but to other industries around the world. Hopefully media being a big one.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I saw the Impervious browser kind of tease on Twitter a little while ago. I think that'd be really cool. Just having a Lightning, it's like your Lightning card, but your Lightning browser, and like everything's like Lightning native, making payments throughout the internet as needed. And I think one of the other cool things about Lightning is, especially now when prices of everything have kind of fallen off a cliff the last few days, it's cool to reflect on how that hasn't changed any of the things that happen on the Lightning Network. Like, it doesn't matter if prices go down 50% or up 50%. Lightning works just as well. I just put out a tweet this morning that we're at an all-time high for a number of Lightning nodes, channels, capacity, public capacity. Like, everything's still at an all-time high, and it just keeps going up and up. And it's amazing to see how Lightning just improves over time, no matter what the price does. So it's almost like it's its own insulated thing. Like, this network is growing on its own, independent of what the prices of crypto assets do.
Yeah, I think it's the fundamentals of Lightning and Bitcoin in general as well. We're at an all-time hash rate, I think, was it last week as well. And then, like you're saying, with the Lightning nodes, we're at all-time highs with a lot of fundamental metrics. And that's a lot of the time what I pay more attention to than the price. The price is, I don't want to say insignificant for me, but, it's a side point that, I do pay attention to, of course, because I have to from a business perspective, but my focus is around building these products and paying attention more to the metrics that matter to me, which is exactly what you've just said there. The nodes, hash rates, channels being created, liquidity being locked in. They're the fundamentals that I pay more attention to.
Where can people go to find out more about you guys and about CoinCorner?
Twitter probably is where we mostly hang out. Danny's a influential
Non-stop.
Are you an influencer?
I don't know. I don't want to be called. Twitter is probably the best place to contact us. CoinCorner on Twitter, CoinCorner Danny, CoinCorner Zakk. Always there. If anyone's got questions, anyone wants, DMs are always open. I'll try and keep DMs always open. So always welcome any questions and anything people want to say. CoinCorner.com, obviously the website. Please feel free to visit us, nosy around, and check out the products. And hopefully in the next coming month, we'll be announcing and pushing more of the products we've spoken about today.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time, guys. Really enjoyed the call, and I'm excited about this Lightning card.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for the time.
Welcome to the Lightning Round presented by Voltage. Voltage is the premier provider of Bitcoin and Lightning node infrastructure. Many of the apps and services you already use in the Bitcoin and Lightning ecosystem already use Voltage to scale their business quickly and easily without any maintenance. Voltage also offers an inbound liquidity product called Flow that helps you as a node operator get inbound liquidity quickly and easily. Overall, Voltage is creating the industry standard of non-custodial products, helping brands and startups and entrepreneurs scale. To learn more about Voltage, visit voltage.cloud. All right, let's get into the lightning round now. Once again, a record number of payments, of messages, of number of supporters. All metrics are headed in the right direction. So thank you all for sending in comments, questions, and sats. First comment, let's run through them. We got John SBRT sent in a message with 4,900 sats, and he says, boost. Thank you, John, for the boost. Next up, we had Peter, who says, question for Danny. In your opinion, what is the most underestimated effect of Bitcoin adoption? Peter, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I just read that question after filming with Danny, so I didn't have a chance to ask him on air, but I did send it to him on Twitter, and he said he'll get back to me with an answer. So I will update you when I hear back from Danny. But thank you for sending in the 2079 sats and for the question. Next, we had a comment in from an anonymous user on Breeze. They said, boost from Newt. So thank you, Newt, for the 1884 sats. Next up is Mary Oscar sent in a comment. He says, great episode. This is in response to episode 14. Considering one of the HRF bounties was for Bolt 12, I'd love to see an episode that explains what bolts are in more detail and the process around developing the spec and implementing them. Maybe you could find a good guest for this. I like where your head's at, Oscar. I'm on it. I've got a great guest. We're going to do an in-depth dive into LNURL, Bolt 12, the future of Lightning payments, and some of the different specs being built out right now. But thank you for the 1100 sats and the comment. Next up, we have African BLC. African BLC says, really enjoying the show. More Africa, please. I'm on that as well. There's lots to talk about with the future of Bitcoin and Lightning across the continent of Africa, and I definitely am on the lookout for more guests. Next, we have at JPN Ledger, and they say, great show. Sent in 50 sats. Thank you. And so that is all of the comments. I also got 2 streams in from at Cube on Fountain and at Right Hand Sun on Fountain. So thank you both for sending in sats. Okay, so now that you guys are sending in all these sats, I want to start giving them back. First, I'm going to, because this is episode 15, I'll give away 1,500 sats to a random comment on this episode. So you guys can open up your Lightning podcasting apps, send in a comment, and I will announce the winner on episode 16, so the next show. Just make sure. Right now there's no ability for me within Fountain, that's the app I use for managing all the podcasting stuff. There's no ability for me to pay a listener directly in Fountain. I've reached out to the Fountain team. I let them know they're working on a solution. But in the meantime, if you're going to comment and if you're going to participate and if you want to take part in this giveaway, you got to send me something. Send me your Twitter handle, send me a Lightning address, some way that I can send payments to you, because otherwise there's no way for me to send money back directly through Fountain today. So send me a comment, add in your Twitter handle, add in your Lightning address, Telegram, whatever it is, and I will pick a comment at random, and we'll do a 1,500 sat giveaway, and excited to see what you guys send in.